What's up, y'all? I've been wanting to make this vid for a long time. I got to show you the work I used to do, man. I got 25 years of telecom. I started out in laboring as in installation, installing this equipment. I'm a high school dropout. Never got a degree. Well, I never had a degree in nothing. Never went to college. I BS my way in. My brother-in-law gave me a way in, and after that, he taught me the beginnings and the basics, him and my sister. And after that, I went from installation to crew leader to project manager, even in network engineering. But anyway, I want to show you some of the equipment I did. And keep in mind, after I became a crew leader and a project manager, like I was in charge of jobs where when we started, it was an empty room. This is old Nortel equipment. It's Northern Telecom, but it's Nortel. These are just special equipment, special modems for special services, call forwarding, all that. That's some older equipment. It's outdated. That's part of a trunk system, I believe. Now these are your old rotary, like a rotary phone. Right here, this will go up and down every number you dialed. Step equipment, I believe it's called, but that no longer exists. Everything is digital now. But I have worked on this. I did daily service orders in Michigan. Now, here's a more up-to-date switch. These yellow ducts are for fiber optic cable. And I've put in jobs where we had to put everything in. Everything you see in this picture, we had to install, including the ironwork, the ladder racks, the superstructure, the equipment racks, all the grounds. That's a battery room. All phone offices run on negative 48 volt DC power. So if your power ever goes out, you should still have telephone. And I've been on jobs where a whole floor in a city is full of these batteries. You can smell the electric in the air, the acid. It's a trip, man. Running cables as thick as my wrist in there. More batteries. That's a more modern one. It's more up to date. This is older equipment here. I think those are digital trunks. Well, they're trunks, they're not digital. I'm not really sure what this is. It's a fiber interface. I can see the fiber optic cable right here. This isn't from one of my jobs. This is just your typical telecom equipment room. Just an overview of how much equipment's in there. This is called a main distribution frame, MDF. Every one of them blue and white wires is a telephone circuit. They used to attach on bugs on there to listen to conversations, whatever, trace lines. You can trace anybody's phone line. See, this is how I know what's going on that y'all don't. Just another close-up of the MDF. Call them jumpers. I'm not real sure about this equipment. I don't know what this is, honestly. I've been in buildings where people wore roller skates because the whole floor was a MDF. And if you had to trace two wires, you had to do a lot of running around. and climbing up and down ladders all day long, especially installing new lines, whatever. I'm not sure what that is. That's older equipment too. This is in your power area. I'm not that good of a power man. Well, I did all the power on my jobs, but I never had to deal with the technical side of this. I'm not really sure what that is. I think that's either an inverter or I'm not 100% positive. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing, so I'll just skip it. There, that'd be a typical job, getting all the equipment bays. This is for a data system here. I know that because they're cabinetized. Getting the lineups ready, mounting the equipment. These are racks here. They're not bays, like you just seen. These are just equipment racks. Running the cables, running more cables. All these cables we had to run in too. Every one of them had to be connectorized. We had to make these connectors, run them in, cut them, make the connector, plug them in. They all had to go to designated spaces. That's further on down the job. And you had to do the cosmetics perfectly. You know, you couldn't make it look all sloppy. Like, I'll show you some sloppy work later. But this is just while they're still roughing it in, using tie wraps. Some people call them zip ties. Well, nowadays you don't really use them. You use you have to lace it in with sewing cord. It's 9 cord. It's wax coated nylon string. It's a typical day at work right there. Everybody's standing around making connections, plugging them in. This is near the end here. Now, after all this stuff is put in, see these when I talk about cosmetics, they have to look perfect. You got to be able to trace one cable down with your finger to where it goes. And every one of these connections has to be tested for the customer before they'll accept it. Make sure there's no shortage, no shorts, no crosswires, all that. It's an art, man. A lot of craftsmanship involved here. They're using tie wraps. Every job I've been on, we use tie wraps temporarily. Like we get it done like this to this point, then cut all these out, and then lace it with lacing cord, the wax string I was telling you about. Because after a while, the plastic of the zip ties will cut into the cable. Just everything has to be look nice, just like I'm showing you. It has to be perfect. And really, this isn't nothing. I mean, I've been on some big jobs. The last few years I was working, I was putting these in Kansas City and up in New Jersey. They're actually part of an QChat system. Don't get it mixed up with chat. It's just a name. It was a big data center, basically for 4G. See, when I realized what 4G was and where it was going, I quit my job in 2009, I think it was, doing a 4G upgrade when I realized what was going on. But when I was like supervisor, the crew leader, we started with an empty room. We had to install this ironwork, all the cable rack, everything, everything. There's an empty room. I'll show you. I got some pictures coming up. The fiber duct, had installed that, run all the fiber. That's cabinetized. That looks like a Lucent switch or maybe a GTE5 switch. Not real sure. I can't tell. These are power cables here. It looks like. No, they're not. Those are DSX cables. Cross connects. That's older equipment. This is a PDF or a BDFB. That's where you run all the power to for your equipment. This is the work I did mostly because I couldn't really trust anyone on my crew to do it. There's a lot of voltage going through here. It's a ground bar there. Now this is a data system here. I worked in these down around Washington, D.C., Reston, Virginia. There's a big data system down there. And we ran cables not only above, but also underneath the floor. Now this is an older office. You could tell because of how messy it is. Look at this. Today that's unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. Unacceptable right there. Data center there, running cables underneath. That's part of the cooling system and the generator system. Because if the batteries go dead, the generator will kick on to recharge the batteries if all the other power goes out. And plus they have inverters to convert the DC to AC to run the office. And all these offices are bomb proof. I don't know why this ain't, oh there it is. Okay. That's a mess there, that's unacceptable. That's terrible. I'm trying to make this as quick as possible. All this, that's a mess. That's a sloppy office. That's called a MAP, Maintenance Administration position, where they keep an eye on all the alarms, any equipment failures, or if they're monitoring somebody, or yeah, keeping an eye on. They're watching the office basically. Plus, they can watch other people's lines, internet, whatever. I'm telling you, nothing's safe. Those are rectifiers in the power room. That's a fiber bay there. Fiber equipment, probably a multiplex system. These are ends of lineups. It's probably typical for a data center or a larger office in a city. That's an alarm center there with all the power and everything for the whole switch. Right there's a turbine. That's for a generator system. Oops, this one there. That's a staging area. All the equipment, all the materials and boxes, getting ready to build onto this site. That's already existing cable rack. Now I've done jobs where I started out in a room like this. Started out in a room like that and ended up being a switch. That's just the roof vents. That's underground where the cables come in from the rest of the world. But I've done jobs where it started out with a room like this, empty, It made it look like that. It made it look like this. That's what I did all my life, man, traveling around. Anyway,